Well, thank you for joining me here on this Monday. The tropics continue to heat up with our second major hurricane of the Atlantic season, Hurricane Gabrielle, which rapidly intensified from a Category 1 storm this morning to a Category 4 this evening to the east of Bermuda. That fortunately is not a threat to land. It is not nearly as big a storm as Hurricane Aaron was last month and likely to continue to head away to the north and east. But that shouldn't be it here. We have additional areas we're monitoring across the main development region of the central Atlantic, and maybe more to come after that. And the Western Pacific remains very active with a destructive super typhoon, which slammed into the islands north of the Philippines and now has its aim on China and Southeast Asia. So, we're going to talk about what's going on in the tropics today and what's to come in the coming weeks here, including some potential impacts to the United States and to the islands of the Caribbean and the Bahamas in the coming days as well. Thank you for joining me here. If you have not yet subscribed, it doesn't cost you anything to do so. That will keep you in touch with me and give you the latest content. I do try to do videos on a mainly daily basis during the season here. As we continue to track multiple threats here, I will be as active as I can here. And you can see it is very active here on this map here. We have Hurricane Gabrielle, a Category 4 storm now. Probably peaking in intensity. We also have a Category 4 typhoon, Ragasa, which was a Category 5 super typhoon just a short while ago. And behind that, we have additional storms to watch here in the Western Pacific, in the Eastern Pacific as well, with Narda and a couple of areas to monitor here across the Central Atlantic as well. Here's a closer look. The map getting more colorful here in the Atlantic, as you would expect this time of the year. Even though it has been a sleepy start, we are going to pick things up here with an area that is likely going to be our next system here, although there's an area ahead of it which could try to jump the gun ahead of it. And that one will be bringing weather into the islands here over the next couple of days. The northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and eventually the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas as well. After that, something to keep an eye on across the East Coast, in particular North Carolina, and maybe even a little farther north. The system behind it right now looks like it will more than likely recurve, but also something to watch in Bermuda as well, believe it or not, following in the path of Gabrielle potentially. But until either of these systems develops, there will still be larger than typical uncertainty here with the track. By the way, not on the map, there are additional waves out in here which may gradually get their act together here as well in the coming week or so. And you can see why things have strengthened so quickly once they get into this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. Surface water temperatures remain hotter than average here around Bermuda and across the southwestern Atlantic. They're pretty hot as well over the Gulf and in the Caribbean, but the air has been unstable, or has not been unstable enough for development. Typically, what happens is these waves come across and develop in here. But it's been sinking air in place for the most part across this area, meaning no development. However, once these systems get up into here, we've seen a relaxation in wind shear, more moisture in place. And if the upper level environment isn't too hostile with westerlies in place, then what we typically see are storms in this area strengthen pretty quickly. If we did have a storm in here form, we could certainly see rapid development, but the difference between these two areas is that we have a lot more land to navigate here, and that can cause some issues with development. The Gulf is still open season. It's not shut down yet. We just have not yet been able to get the right conditions in place to see a powerful system. And this time of the year, different things can happen. Typically, for a strong system in the Gulf, you need one of two things. You need a stronger wave to come down here, like we saw with Hurricane Beryl last year, and move up in this direction. And then there's a chance it could gain some latitude after that. Or you need a strong Central American gyre somewhere in here that triggers a strong enough wave here that's far enough away from Central America, maybe in this area, to come up in this direction and come up towards Florida, or maybe make an angle more towards Louisiana. That could still happen. We're certainly not finished with the season yet, but right now that is not the immediate concern. What is of bigger concern is what is moving in from the Central Atlantic. And when things develop farther east, they tend to recurve a lot faster. Another thing I've been watching this season, the fact that the waters have been so warm here across the Atlantic Maritimes of Canada, and on top of cooler water down in here, part of that's a byproduct of much warmer than average northeastern Pacific ocean water temperatures. That creates stability. And when you have more stable air, you get a sinking motion across the basin here. When this warm air mixes down with the cooler air, it typically brings warmer air down from the poles. What we really want to see is warmer air from the tropics get distributed this direction, and that's not happening. And because of that, we have seen fewer storms. However, the storms that have managed to survive have been very intense in how they have strengthened, such as with Hurricane Aaron a month ago and now with Hurricane Gabrielle today. So moving along, we're going to talk about what's going on in the Atlantic. Things picking up, as you can see here, with Hurricane Gabrielle here passing to the east of Bermuda. And we're going to circle that for you right here. Let me grab my pen. This is Hurricane Gabrielle, much smaller than Hurricane Aaron, which covered this much area. This one's about half the size. Here's the next wave behind it. This one came off Africa about a week ago. It stumbled out of the gate. Now it's beginning to pick things up. The one after it is hanging in there as well. These two are going to race to see which one becomes our next system. I would say there's a chance at least one of them could be, depending on which model you believe. Maybe both of them could be. And behind that, we see another wave, which could emerge from Africa in the coming days and develop into a system as well. Now, this system down in here has the biggest threat to the islands here in a couple of days. And that's what we want to watch in the U.S. and the Bahamas as well, because of that lower track here a little bit farther south. This one here, assuming it develops, is probably more than likely going to follow in the path of Gabrielle. And if you are on the island of Bermuda, it is certainly something we need to be watching. The one after it, it's way too early to tell, depending on when it develops, of course. But things still just not looking very likely to see any development over this portion of the world here, where typically things start getting busier. And they may continue to get busier when we get into October. So that's what we're looking at here. Here's a look at the Gulf, the Caribbean. And again, we have strong southwesterlies across Florida. We have strong wind shear in place. We do have a mid-level low here, and that is actually moving southwest, distancing itself from Hurricane Gabrielle. So that's going to bring some rain across the southern Bahamas in the coming days. It's also going to flare things up over the greater Antilles here, as you can see with our heating of the day storms. Some slightly cooler air aloft will trigger those heavy mountain afternoon thunderstorms. So those of you vacationing, keep that in mind. You'll want to get into the mountainous areas here early in the day. And we do have our typical monsoonal thunderstorms as well, kind of the same process here across Central America and across the Yucatan. But other than that, things are smooth sailing for the time being. In the Western Atlantic here, you see we do have some moisture increasing over South Florida and creeping up the North Carolina coast, but nothing organized at this point. We finally have some rain and storms moving eastward across Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Western PA, and Western New York. Finally seeing some rain and thunderstorms here. This is very needed at this point. It's not a ton, but it's certainly going to help things out. Unfortunately, New England, mid-Atlantic area, Atlantic Canada, we're still going to be waiting on heavy rain. And then you can see here our well-defined system here, small but intense Hurricane Gabrielle. Here are the two waves that we're tracking across the Central Caribbean. I'll talk a little bit more about those. You can see neither is in a rush to develop. However, both are showing a little bit more signs of organization. And that trend is certainly one to be a little bit more concerned with. And then behind that second wave, a little bit quieter over the Eastern Atlantic. But you can see we have additional waves that are propagating across West Africa and set to emerge into the waters of the Eastern Atlantic. All right, here's a look at Gabrielle, and you can see part of the reason the system has strengthened, there's actually a pretty intense portion of the jet stream here, which is creating what's called upper level diffluence, allowing the air to spread out here. And that gives the storm a spot to grow and grow in size a little bit more on the northeastern side. So very well-defined system, not seeming to mind the dry air to the south and east over here, or the dry air to the north and west, or this upper level low down here. Sometimes this kind of a system can be small and sneaky and can become a very powerful one, much unlike the systems we're watching right now in the Western Pacific that are just massive. But you can see here, the storm has continued to strengthen. Winds are up to 140 miles per hour. So now almost a medium level category 4 storm. And Bermuda on the map, just feeling the rough surf out of the north, but really avoiding the rain for the time being. Taking a look here at another view, you can see the cloud tops continue to cool here near the center, all the way down to 75 degrees Celsius below zero. And that pressure started the day at 981 millibars, now dropping down below 950 millibars. So pretty impressive strengthening, albeit not anything compared to what we saw with Hurricane Aaron during the second weekend of August. Here's another view of it, seeing the lightning surrounding the eye here in the northeastern eye wall, indicating a very healthy core of our system here. That's from the GLM, the Global Lightning Mapper here. And that indicates that this system, for the time being, is going to remain very powerful. If you look at the radar from Bermuda, you can see Bermuda's getting a very good view from the front porch and a safe view. We're very fortunate to say. It's a small target, but Bermuda certainly gets hit with some pretty nasty storms. This one, fortunately, a swing and a miss. It's about 250 to 300 kilometers away to the east and pulling away as well. What you will see here with the structure of the system is that it actually had a second eye wall beginning to form, and then the two kind of consolidated. So instead of a full eye wall replacement, we actually saw an eye wall consolidation, and that actually led to further strengthening. It's a pretty rare phenomenon, honestly, but it is one that will certainly continue to be studied here and doesn't mean a lot for us here today, other than the fact that we have a storm system that continues to be resilient and very impressive here. And, there were some global models a few days ago that said if Gabrielle were to survive the wind shear of the central Atlantic, she was going to get strong. And certainly that has been the case. So the Hurricane Center has done a very good job in handling this, albeit it has gotten stronger in the shorter term than what I think a lot of us expected here. Aircraft have gone through the storm. They've continued to see the pressure drop off. As you can see, the winds have come up as well. And the last pass from NOAA earlier this afternoon showed the pressure had dropped into the low 950s here, and that the winds were coming up here up over 120 to 130 knots at flight level. And here's just a diagram showing you the black indicates the flight level winds here. So it was measuring winds of about 140 to 150 miles per hour. These are in knots, so you add 15%. And it continued to show that the pressure was dropping at about a millibar or two per hour. So it is done rapidly intensifying. It may still strengthen just a tiny bit more, though, this evening. Another interesting thing to point out from the recon is that over our last pass, we've seen both the temperature of the eye and the dew point of the eye jump up dramatically. Inside the eye, the temperature was about 15 degrees Celsius earlier in the day. Now it's up to almost 20 degrees. So about a 9-degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature. And when the eye warms like that and the dew point comes up, that typically indicates that the storm is still strengthening. So thank goodness we've got aircraft to go out and measure that. Else we'd just be sitting there kind of guessing at what's going on. So here's what the intensity forecast looks like here. We see the storm is probably peaking or will be peaking shortly. And we'll gradually start to weaken back down to Category 3 here overnight or tomorrow. And then down to Category 2, we believe, here by Tuesday night or Wednesday. Category 1 later in the week as we start to increase the wind shear to the west and move into cooler water. So that's not unusual. And we'll continue to track it here over time. But we're going to move on and talk about the next features over here. And what you'll see right now is the reason neither of these is developing quickly here. You see here is wave 1. Here's wave 2, albeit this is actually area 1. From a development chronological standpoint, here's area 2, meaning this one is the first one that got picked to potentially develop. Here's the second one. We still have a fair amount of dry air coming in here from the north and east, and you can kind of see that northeast push. So that is going to hamper some development. But the fact that these two are not on top of each other means they should remain separate entities at this point. Also, the fact that Gabrielle's expected to begin to pick up some forward speed and move out means that number 2 here is going to have a chance. Number 1 may also have a pretty good chance. We're also going to track this stuff down in here, but it is awfully far south. I think we're going to have to wait a few more days before whatever comes off of Africa becomes our next potential issue here. So we are going to go back to the Atlantic here. I did want to show you Tomer Berg's site here, talking about the next two. If we pull up area of interest number 1, this is actually the area that's farther out. You can see here that it's got a 30% chance of becoming our next system, which would be Humberto between now and Wednesday afternoon, but then an 80% chance over the next week. Expected to potentially develop just east of the Leeward Islands or perhaps a little bit later on. It's actually going to go into some warmer water here, despite the last storms going over it. The water's still warmer, and the track on it is likely to be a fish storm at this point. If we take a look here at the ensemble viewer, we are going to see here. And let me get think that's the wrong area of interest here. Here we go. We take a look here, we can see it should go to the north of the islands, but then could likely recurve close to Bermuda here over time. This does not tell us the intensity of the storm. It just shows us where the ensembles are taking it. And here's the latest ensemble track density. And the blue line is the European model, which takes it just west of Bermuda here. In fact, awfully uncomfortably close to Bermuda here when we get into several days down the road here, probably early next week. The black area is the average of the ensembles, but the ensembles go from near the Bahamas all the way out to possibly North Carolina. That's a big outlier, by the way. The main package, though, is from north of Hispaniola to well to the east here, with about a 600 or 700 mile spread on either side of Bermuda. So a lot of uncertainty still, and until it forms, we don't exactly know how this is going to play out. But what I am going to point out here is that the European ensemble is indicating this has the potential to be a stronger system as well, and maybe our next hurricane. You can see there are some lower pressures in here, 974. That's a Category 2 hurricane. Even some deeper pressures in here showing Category 3 or Category 4. So a lot of uncertainty, but just something we're going to be watching here. But what this tells me is that there's a decent chance we're probably going to have yet another hurricane out in here. Now, the Canadian's not quite as strong. It's a little bit farther to the west. I don't really spend a lot of time looking at the UK Met. It's over there if you want to take a peek. That's the wrong one. The Google DeepMind. This one here is interesting because it is a little farther west than the European, but it does show a recurve. Now, it does show some possible solutions coming a little bit farther up the East Coast. Again, I don't know if that's right. I like to look at the general trend. And you can see, generally speaking, this is likely to recurve, although we have to watch the western outliers. And you can see it's going to follow a track similar to Gabrielle and similar to Aaron as well, probably between the two here. So we're looking at about 200 or 210 hours before potentially an impact on Bermuda here. And this is still subject to change quite a bit here. In fact, here's the latest Google DeepMind ensemble, and that shows the track is going to be very close to Bermuda, as you can see. In fact, you can't even find Bermuda on the map here, but I am going to circle it for you. It's right in here somewhere. And looking at the average of the ensemble, 969 is a Category 2 to almost Category 3 hurricane. So if you're in Bermuda, this is not your last rodeo, unfortunately. I do think we're going to have another system to contend with here in a little over a week. So that's area of interest number one. Oops, let me get back here. Going back to area of interest number two, this one, I almost gave it away. It is a little more questionable right now because, well, number one, it's got to compete with a trough that's going to be near the East Coast. Number two, it's got a system to its west. And number three, nothing's really survived this season so far when it's gotten over in this direction. Now, that could certainly change. So for now, it's got a low chance of developing for the next couple of days, but then that opportunity may arise as we get later into the week and probably this weekend. So a 50-50 chance for now. As we take a look at the ensembles, you're going to see some interesting things here. Starting here with the GFS, you're going to see that it develops this system just to the north and east of the Bahamas and then takes it very close to the East Coast, but potentially recurving it. The question mark is, when does that happen? Does that even happen? Does it even develop? And we have a lot of unanswered questions at this point. Here's a GFS ensemble from earlier saying, for the most part, this is going to come close enough to the East Coast where we need to watch it. In fact, it has some solutions going into North Carolina. And the timeline on that is about 7 days away. So we're talking Sunday, Monday of next week when we could potentially have a system. Now, doesn't have nearly as many strong solutions as the one I just showed you. So the intensity forecast on this one for the time being is still quite questionable. And it's not a given that it's going to be a strong system or a hurricane. It could be a low that struggles. Looking at the European ensemble here, moving this along here, you can see it is a lot less gung-ho on if this system develops. It's got it quite a bit weaker here, but it does have a few scenarios where this could try to get itself going near North Carolina. It's also got the possibility that it turns out near the Bahamas and recurves and follows the track of the last system. So again, we've got a lot here to figure out in the coming days. The Canadian shows, again, a potential impact on the mid-Atlantic coast. Outer Banks, of course, sticks out. So that's something we're going to have to watch. And then the Google DeepMind is the one that I've been looking at for several days, showing a possible impact on the East Coast. And you can see while most of our ensembles are offshore, there are quite a few that are not. So, bottom line is, if you're on the East Coast, now is the time to not let your guard down. Now's the time to start keeping an eye on things. And I'm not going to scare you yet because we got a lot of time still. But we need to just keep in mind the potential for maybe something to impact the East Coast here, potentially as soon as Sunday or Monday of next week, and maybe a little later than that. But we don't have as much time as we think, as this wave will be moving towards the islands. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at here. The European AI, this is a mess. You can see that it's not as excited about the first system, the system that's farther west, as it is the second system. But you can see there are some solutions here that do, in fact, develop it near the East Coast. So we've got kind of two envelopes here, one out in here and one over in here. The two are going to keep a safe distance from each other, I believe, but maybe not a huge distance. And we still have some uncertainty here, but the East Coast needs to be watching this one. Bermuda needs to be watching this one. And I did show you all the European here a little while ago. Operational models, man, oh man, I really don't trust these. The GFS is finally starting to wake up here. It's like a sleepy president we just have, to be honest with you, but it's losing the second one and it's developing the first one. I don't know. I mean, the Google DeepMind model was picking up on that, but the GFS has a hurricane here east of Florida and northeast of the Bahamas on Sunday morning, then weakens the system as it comes up close to North Carolina, and then weakens it more and takes it out to sea. It never develops a second system, and I just don't buy that at this point. In fact, it actually develops something in the Caribbean, which is possible. And as you can see, the GFS starts going crazy here in the longer term. That I don't necessarily trust, but it's something to watch. You can see it's got another wave out in here as well. But I'm going to say this. The GFS has been on this idea now for a few days with the development near the Bahamas. I'm going to zoom in and show that to you all here because if you have a few minutes, I think this is important for you to take a look at with me. But you can see here, this is the latest run, the 12Z, and it's definitely something to watch, especially in North Carolina. But going back here, and this is zoomed in quite a bit. Let's see if I can make it a little smaller for you. The run before, indeed, also had a hurricane and made a close approach here to the Outer Banks. And man, I wish I could. This is not user friendly. Sorry, folks. Basically a low end hurricane riding the coast here and then going out to sea and really only impacting North Carolina and Virginia, just like we saw back at the beginning of last week. So you get a 2-week break before the next one. Here's the earlier GFS. And again, it's developing this system. So the GFS is obsessed with this system, whereas the other models are actually more with the second system. And it just leaves you with a lot of uncertainty and what exactly is going to happen here. And all I can really say with confidence is we just need to watch. I do think we will eventually have a U.S. threat. I've said that for a while. The pattern is just there. But if you look at the European, it's got a weak system here, lollygagging near Florida. It's got a stronger system here that is potentially approaching Bermuda. That was the 0Z, but the 12Z has corrected back and has a very similar look to Gabrielle here in just over a week. This is scary. It's got a 954 right over the west end of Bermuda on Wednesday night, but this can change a million times. So we're going to keep an eye on it for you. One thing is for sure, if you're in the islands here, you're going to get some rain and some wind. It's moving in here tomorrow. It's going to pick up tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. Heavy rain for the northern Windward Islands and certainly the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico as well Wednesday night into Thursday. The potential between now and the end of this week for some areas to pick up 3 to 4 inches of rain and gusty winds as well here, albeit they're not going to be super strong, but we could see some of the elevations picking up wind gusts around 30 to 40 miles per hour. So we're going to keep an eye on that for you here. Waves are going to be high on the eastern coast here of the United States from Gabrielle, and that will spread northward here, as you can see, into Atlantic Canada tonight and tomorrow. So beachgoers, keep that in mind here. Then we get a little bit of a break, and then you can see the next surge here over the weekend around the Outer Banks from a potential system, and it could actually stay windy for the majority of next week. The Gulf could see gusty winds as well. And we're going to have more of that to come. All right. Lastly, I want to talk about the rest of the world here and then wrap it up. We've got Narda, which is strengthened to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm and expected to be a Category 2 and maybe major hurricane out here in the Eastern Pacific. It's really not a direct threat to land. That is the good news about Narda. But Narda should be back for a 7th iteration here in 6 more years. I know you're excited to hear that. We had a major typhoon here, violent typhoon, but Neoguri, but no longer looks like a Japan threat. It's going to stall out here, but eventually a trough will pick it up. The system that we're most concerned with was one that made a really nasty impact here on the islands just north of mainland Philippines. In fact, winds were 160 miles per hour. Let me refresh that. And now we've seen just some slight weakening, but this is probably going to go just south of Hong Kong, maybe towards southern mainland China. Hainan will be affected here, and winds are down to 145. But this is a really nasty typhoon still. And I don't even want to know what the damage is going to be like. It could be really nasty here, but you can see on the graphic here that this is a very powerful system. Fortunately, the worst has avoided Taiwan, but China will be in for it next, and then eventually northeastern Vietnam as well. There's another area we're going to have to watch here that could threaten the Philippines over here, mainly the southern and central Philippines. And then this is the typhoon that is now weakening well to the east of Japan over here. So the Western Pacific is hopping for sure. It took a long time. They were actually less busy with respect to average than the Atlantic was, but they have certainly picked up. And you can see, wow, what a storm Ragasa has been. Even though it's weakened some, a Category 4 is still a very powerful system. The pressure on this was down maybe as low as 910 millibars. So our strongest system of the year across the globe. And you can see now pretty tight track here to the south of Hong Kong. And it is going to weaken some, but may try to re-strengthen a little bit more here before its final approach into mainland China is expected here on Tuesday night. So here's a look at the wind field from Ragasa here. And then here's the next one, by the way, and that could produce tropical storm to maybe low-end typhoon intensity well to the south of Manila, more over southern portions of the Philippines later on this week. And then after that, it's something we'll have to watch here on Hainan and maybe in Vietnam as well, as you can see here on this wider scale view of Southeastern Asia as well. Here's a look at that next one. I do want to talk about it because, you know, we've seen a lot of storms out here rapidly intensify. The water's super warm. I don't think that happens before it gets to the Philippines, but something to watch here in Vietnam. If you have family out there, just something they need to keep an eye on. But there are some stronger solutions to watch after this passes to the west of the Philippines and moves over towards the Gulf of Tonkin. So we're going to watch that pretty closely here. Oh, there's my European. But I do want to finish this with a word of gospel here, the good news. Paul tells the church of Rome, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That is Romans 12:2. That is the word of God for the people of God. And I know being a Christian, you know, in the world of science, it's not something you see very often. There aren't very many scientists that are believers. There are some, certainly are. I know quite a few of them, but I do believe that God called me here not to conform to that community, but to be a light in the world of people that have been created by God to study the world, because God has put us here on earth for a reason. And this is my calling. It's to study the weather and to help prepare folks. This is what excites me. But what really excites me is having that relationship with God through Jesus Christ and knowing that eternity is there for me once my time here on earth is gone. I pray that that's the situation you're in as well. Conforming to the world, man, it leads to disappointment. I mean, look at the news out there today. I don't even watch it. I didn't even know what happened a week ago till someone told me, honestly. And it's sad, yes, but I'm spending my time on things that will move me forward in my spiritual journey with God. I pray that you are as well. There's going to be awful things that happen, but by doing God's will, by pleasing God and not by pleasing other humans, that is what brings me joy. And I pray that it brings joy to you, because you really shouldn't get through life without joy. And I know before I became a Christian, there really wasn't a lot of joy. I had people that I cared about that were close to me, but The great part is having a relationship with God. God has been with me throughout my entire journey before I even believed truly in him and in Jesus. And now I'm seeing those miracles, and I pray that you do as well. So thank you so much for joining me here this Monday. And thank you for sticking around for this longer video. There's going to be a lot to talk about this week, and I'm going to have to get some rest. So I appreciate y'all's time, and we'll be back. See ya.